Hey guys, welcome back to the Max Spence Business Podcast. Today I have a very special guest, but before I jump into that, if you guys like the content I'm putting out, please like, subscribe, leave a review. It helps out a ton with the podcast. If you can go over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review, that helps out a ton as well. So today our guest is Dr. Val Franc. So she's a naturopathic doctor with over 20 years of experience. It's great having you on the show, Val.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. It's lovely to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm actually pretty excited to hear a little bit more about your story. So why don't we start with, for maybe people that haven't heard about you, what's your background and what sort of led you into the health industry?
Sure. It's a really fun story to tell. Because again, when we take a look at our career, when we're first starting out, we think we know what we want to do. And I was convinced I was going to go into marine biology, actually. And so I went into Guelph, that university for marine biology, and ended up switching over to nutrition. Fell in love with nutrition and thought, I love animals. I love nutrition. Once I'm done my undergraduate degree, I'm in nutrition, nutritional sciences. I'm actually going to go and study animal nutrition and work with animals in nutrition, maybe work at a zoo. I was just so passionate about animals. And what ended up happening when I graduated and I was applying for my master's and PhD is I got sick. And I went to my medical doctor. I was sleeping for a good, 10, 12 hours, sometimes even closer to 14 hours. I'd be up for an hour and I would feel completely exhausted. And so I was kind of saying to my medical doctor, like, what is going on? So she was amazing. She ran every test underneath the sun. She did everything that she could. And then she just looked at me and she said, all of the tests are coming back normal. This is just stress. Go home and sleep some more. So I'm like, how can you sleep more without being in a coma? You cannot, right? So it just wasn't something that was going to work for me. So I realized, there's got to be something else out there. There's got to be another answer because I can't live like this. And my aunt at the time, she kind of said to me, hey, I'm seeing a naturopath. Why don't you go and see my naturopath? He's a great guy. He did wonderful stuff for me. So I thought, okay. So I went to see the naturopath, and the naturopath said to me, it's your diet. And I was like, this is impossible. I go to this amazing university, one of the best in Canada for nutritional sciences and for any type of science. Like, Guelph is incredible. So if that was my diet, they would have known about it, and someone there would have told me that this was a possibility. But sure enough, it was. We did some food sensitivity testing. I was allergic to life, and I could basically eat air. For those of you who have done the food sensitivity testing, you know what I'm talking about. When you first read the results, you're kind of like, oh my. But for me, as soon as I took those foods out, my health turned around like that. I couldn't believe what a change and what a difference. But then I also kind of said, well, wait a minute. How come my medical doctor didn't know about this? Because she's brilliant and she did everything she knew how to do. How come no one at Guelph knew this, an entire undergraduate degree? Because they're brilliant and they're at the top of their field. So I was like, okay, naturopaths have different training. They have secret knowledge, and I want to know what those guys know. So I was like, my medical doctor is great. The medical community is great, but they don't know the secret stuff. So then I was hooked. I went on this quest for knowledge. I became so fascinated with it. I applied to the naturopathic college. I ended up getting in. And I ended up graduating actually with honors. I was just so passionate about finding out what was going on and finding out the secret knowledge, because I thought, if I'm eating foods that I know are unhealthy. Like, we all know when we eat the Twinkie, the ho-ho, the chocolate covered, whatever it is, that's deep fried and dipped in something else, right? Sugar dusted. We know that's bad for us. That's a choice. But when I was eating foods that I was intolerant to, and I didn't know it was harming me, because I didn't have that knowledge, someone had taken away my choice. I'm like, if I want to destroy my body, I'm fine with that. I will do that, but I want it to be my choice. So I really became passionate about exploring all the options with respect to medicine with all different aspects. So I actually started to study hypnosis because I wanted to know, hey, if I put together this amazing protocol for my patients, but they can't implement it into their life, the strategy becomes worthless. Right? I can say, oh, I've got the best plan that's going to just take you to optimum health and you'll live to be 120 and windsurfing the whole time. But it's a pill this big and you can't swallow it. Not helpful. So I studied hypnosis so that I could look into the mind-body connection and some of the things that it mentally would be contributing to our health and well-being and what we could implement and what we couldn't. I studied yoga and became a certified yoga instructor. I went on as well to study acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine. I went to China and studied at a teaching hospital there. I did extra courses in visionary cranial sacral therapy as well. So I just really became just so passionate about, what with health, what is out there that we don't know, that we're not being told. I wanted to know the secrets to, okay, why is, and when I was in China, I was in Beijing, and of course you got to see the Great Wall. I'm on the Great Wall, and this like 90-year-old string bean is like running up and down the Great Wall stairs where I'm sitting there and I'm huffing and puffing and I'm like, are you kidding me? How do you do that? How do you live to be 120 and windsurf and be vital and active? And so that was what I became really passionate about, and what I had come to realize throughout my time and throughout my training is that what we consider the aging process here, it's not. We're aging way too fast than we have to be. We're settling for these suboptimal ways of feeling. We don't know how bad we're feeling until we actually start feeling good. And there's a number of different reasons why that happened.
Oh, okay, yeah. That's a very interesting story. So there's a few things I wanted to talk about that I sort of
Sure.
picked out. Was one thing that I thought was really interesting is probably I would say a couple months ago I had a gentleman on that was a founder of Levels. I don't know if you heard about this. He's based from New York City, and pretty much what they're doing is I think it's I can't remember what it's called, but it's like the system that diabetic people use to like track their blood sugars. So so they're taking
Yep.
that and they're pairing that with an app. And pretty much what it can do is it tracks like, when you eat something, it tracks like your blood sugar when it goes up and stuff. And one thing that he found out interestingly, was that certain foods, like you were talking about, actually have a negative impact to you. But this is like everyday foods that you think you'll be fine with, right? So one thing that he was talking about was oatmeal, right? And you know how oatmeal is a very, like, oh, what's the healthiest breakfast you can have? And that's oatmeal. Like oatmeal always comes up for that. And he was saying oatmeal actually has a really negative impact for him. It's like he said, when he would have a bowl of oatmeal and a bowl of cereal, it would be like, sugar type of cereal. It would have the exact same effect to his blood sugars,
Yes.
right? So it's
Yep.
you skyrocket and then just crash, right? So he
Yep.
was like finding things out about his body, and he was like, wow, this is absolutely crazy. He says like things that you think would be healthy for you or just doesn't match with his body, right? So instead, now he switched it to avocado toast and eggs or something, just because it sort of like has that level effect for his blood sugars. But that I just wanted to mention that because I thought that was really interesting, that you brought it up, that you're doing the food testing, which I will cover a little bit more as we go into the podcast. But going back now, so just for some viewers that maybe don't know what a naturopathic doctor is, what is a naturopathic doctor, for like, let's say, explaining that to somebody who's never heard of them before?
Sure. Thank you so much for asking. So, a naturopathic doctor is trained fairly similar to a chiropractor or a medical doctor in that it's a 4-year postgraduate degree. So, we are doctors, which is good to know. So, we go to school for 4 years, and throughout that time, we learn similar things to what a medical doctor would learn in terms of we learn how to read blood work, we learn how to read different types of test results, we learn how to do minor surgery, and you can't do that here in Ontario, but certainly with respect to BC, naturopaths can do that out there. We can learn different intravenous vitamins and minerals. We learn about medications and how they interact in the body and how they interact with other natural therapies. In Ontario, we can also write a prescription license license where we have minor prescription rights. You can do that in other provinces as well. But then above and beyond that, what we look at and what we learn is complementary therapies, natural therapies, and how they work on that biochemical level. So we study nutrition. When we study nutrition, not just from the perspective of Western medicine, but we get that traditional Asian medicine perspective too. We study it from the perspective of different vitamins and minerals and how they work on the same levels of the body. The way that you would prescribe a drug, you can use a vitamin or a mineral for that. We study herbs, botanical medicines. We study acupuncture and traditional Asian medicine. We study homeopathy. We study a little bit of manipulation, which is a way of saying chiropractic without saying, hey, we do what they do, because we don't. They get 4 years of just that. So they're really great at that. But we do learn about the biomechanics of the body. We learn a little bit of massage techniques. So you really look at hydrotherapy, which is using hot and cold water to heal the body. So that's what you're really looking at. We get 4 years of training. And then after that, we can do a residency. Our 4th year, we're actually doing clinical rounds and seeing patients supervised. So, which also reminds me, at this point in time, I've been in practice for 20 years. And I also went back to give back to my community. And I teach at the Naturopathic College, and I've supervised for them as well. So I've kind of done helping the students do their clinical rounds.
Awesome. That's amazing. Okay. So yeah, so that's pretty interesting. So it's sort of similar to a doctor, but I guess
we're doctors. Yeah.
Yeah. So you guys can specialize, right? So like, how some doctors, specialize into, let's say like heart surgery or something like that. Is there naturopathics that are like specialized into certain like, under your umbrella, like specialized into like certain avenues?
So there is extra training that you can do above and beyond the Naturopathic College, and it definitely intravenous vitamins and minerals is one of them. There's extra oncology training. There's a lot of naturopaths who are working in clinical settings with medical doctors to work with cancer patients. So those are definitely things you can do. The prescription license is extra training above and beyond that. But you're right to say, like, there are some naturopaths that choose to work with very specific areas of practice. So there are some naturopaths that I know that really love working with children. So they have pediatrics as a focus of their practice. There are others that like working specifically with sports medicine, or again, with cancer, with oncology, or, with mental health issues. So, you can work with different naturopaths depending on, what their area of expertise or focus is.
Okay, awesome. And then another thing I sort of noticed was you were talking a lot about like these health techniques from Asia. Is this like where naturopathics have sort of come from? Is it based in a little bit of like Asian health and wellness, or what's sort of the origin of like the naturopathic doctors?
That is such a great question, and the actual answer is, you know what? It's not. So when we take a look at naturopathic medicine, and when we take a look at allopathic medicine, which is what we call traditional medical doctors, naturopaths were around first. And the first medical college was actually a naturopathic college. So when you look at herbs and when you look at foods from actually that perspective, what you knew as the old time medical doctors before they were actually called medical doctors, that's basically what naturopaths were. And then of course, with the advent of penicillin, everybody was like, hey, now we specialize in, we got the medical doctors specializing, and everybody was like, penicillin is the greatest thing since sliced bread, which you can see why, because that's where it comes from, right? Moldy sliced bread. No, but yeah, naturopaths have been around for a long time, and there's a very powerful Western tradition. So we take the Western botanicals. There's also a strong aspect in terms of native medicine. And I know with respect to the Naturopathic College, we have a very strong respect for native culture, for the native community, as well as for native herbs and native medicine. And we've incorporated some of that into the Naturopathic College. And I know I'm so proud of our college. With every contract that I have that I sign for teaching, there's a really wonderful clause in every single one honoring Native tradition, honoring Turtle Island, and making sure that we work together with the Native populations and communities. So there's that aspect, but we do learn throughout the 4 years traditional Asian medicine as well, and that includes the herbs, that includes the foods, that includes acupuncture.
Oh, okay. That's very interesting. So now I sort of want to jump to what we were talking about before was the food, right? So what type of tests can are people able to do their own tests to figure out what the food? I think you were calling it the food sensitivity testing, or yeah. So is there any can you give any advice for somebody that's wanting to do that? Can you do it yourself, or do you need a naturopathic doctor such as yourself to help them with it, or how does one sort of go about it?
Thank you for asking. There's so many different ways to go about figuring that out. For me, the easiest way is to go and have a naturopath send you for testing, and send you for blood testing. So there are some people out there who do testing by energy. So they say, if you eat a certain food, we can do muscle testing, or you can hold on to these little electrodes and we'll test the energy. That's not very scientific. And from my experience with those, I don't see them really working. If you tell me, we can test this by energy, I'm thinking, well, we're all energetic beings, and as soon as we're within 3 to 5 feet of each other, our energy patterns are merging. So how do you know that's not my stuff and that's your stuff? So I don't like that. I do like the blood testing, because with respect to blood testing, you send it to a lab. It's completely third party. It's not me saying, hey, I think, or I know what symptoms you have. So, there's no bias involved. It's someone third party who doesn't have anything to do with this, just saying, okay, we tested it. We've run it through our testing machines several different times. So we've got a really good cohort, and we can tell you what's going on. There are ways of doing it yourself through foods. It's called an elimination diet. Not fun, because you got to pull out those foods and then you have to add them back in one at a time. Is really challenging.
Oh, wow.
And you don't necessarily take out all the things that you could possibly be reacting to. So with food sensitivity testing, you can test for 120 different foods. You can test for over 200. So you can imagine you're not taking 120 or 200 foods out of your diet. You couldn't. You'd be like, okay, I can breathe and drink water. You just can't do that for the time frame necessary.
Yeah.
So I would say working with a qualified healthcare professional to have the testing done would be your best option.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Because that's something I noticed with myself is certain foods will sometimes I will notice it and sometimes I don't. Other times I'll have a certain meal and I'm like, wow, I'm actually just tired after this and I want to go take a 2-hour nap or something. And the other times I'll have food and it's just it actually feels like energy. It actually feels like I feel better and I have more energy to go off and do work or go work out or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So now I want to talk about one thing I did hear on another podcast was you were actually talking about caffeine, and I know that some people are you should cut the caffeine out. It's do you think you should cut the caffeine out, or is there some benefits to actually having caffeine in your diet, and what are your sort of thoughts on that?
I love the questions that you're asking. They're just great. And so the first thing that I would say is you shouldn't should on yourself, right? Because we can get okay, if Jesus was here, he'd be plant-based, vegan, no caffeine, no alcohol, no, right? And we can just put these little boxes around ourselves that kind of make life not happy. Right?
Yeah.
Food it's meant to be enjoyed. It should be tasty, but it should also nourish your body and energize it. So what you're looking at is, and what it actually boils down to, which is my area of expertise, is the biochemical individuality and the uniqueness. So the fact is that every single human being, each one of us, is our own biochemical universe, which changes over time. And that's really what you want to get dialed in and figured out. If you go and look at studies, you'll see studies out there that say caffeine is evil and it causes this, that, and the other thing. And then you'll see other studies that say caffeine is fantastic. It's great for this, 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 and this. So you're going to get confused. You're going to be like, well, what is it? How can you be saying caffeine is bad and it causes this, but then it's also good and it does this, right? And what it boils down to is genetics and biochemical individuality. So there are studies out there saying that, hey, if you have some caffeine, it can increase blood flow into your brain, and it can actually help in terms of preventing Alzheimer's and senile dementia. And there are studies out there that will tell you that it can prevent diabetes, but it depends on your genetic individuality. There are people out there who their liver does not metabolize caffeine very well. And for those people, if they have more than 1 cup of coffee a day, it can actually increase their risk of having a heart attack. And for people out there, there are other people who have a higher risk genetically of developing diabetes, who have issues with respect to different receptor sites that handle sugar, that pull it into the body, as well as insulin levels. And for those people, caffeine will actually make them worse. So it actually really depends on your biochemical individuality. But what I say to my patients is, hey, first of all, let's figure this out. Let's figure out what's going on and whether this is something that's beneficial for you or not. And then what we also need to do from there is also say, if you like coffee, if you like the taste of it, then it's okay to have it, but you shouldn't need it. And this is where we run into trouble, because we have so many people who what they'll do is they'll use that caffeine to give themselves that rush, that high, and to give themselves energy in the morning. I need it to wake me up. I need it to get going. I need it or I'm going to crash during the day. That tells me that your body is not liking it and that you're using it to push your body beyond where it wants to go. Whenever you do something, which is why I don't like the term biohack. I'm sorry, Dave Asprey, you're a fantastic guy. You've got a lot of great information, but I hate the word biohack, because it makes it sound like we can push our body beyond its natural limits and that'll be okay. It's not okay. What my experience is that if you try to bypass it, to push it beyond where it should, to hack it, what you're going to do is you're going to get a pushback on the other end. Because the body actually knows what it wants, and your body is actually capable of greater energy, focus, concentration, leanness, and physical fitness than you actually are aware of. You just haven't tapped into it. But when you tap into it with the right foods, the right exercise, the right vitamins and minerals, you don't need the caffeine. Now, if you want it, that's great, but you should be able to have vibrant energy where you wake up, you're ready, you're ready to get out of bed, you're feeling refreshed, you're like, hey, this is fantastic. And then you've got the energy to sustain yourself throughout the day. And you shouldn't have that 3 p.m. or 2 p.m. crash. And you should still have a good amount of energy in the evening, but you also shouldn't get a second wind in the evening. You should be able to go to bed and to fall asleep. And what I find happening for so many people is they use caffeine to jack themselves up during the day and to push them beyond a certain level or to suppress their appetite, which I find a lot of people do when they're trying to lose weight, which is wrong. And then by the end of the evening, they're using alcohol to calm themselves down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that sort of has a bad effect. So two questions on that note. What can you do to sort of figure out if coffee is either bad for you or is either, actually good for you? Like, does that come back to the blood work, getting your blood work tested for that type of stuff? Or is there like, sort of indicators that you can sort of understand, like within oneself, right? Like that saying, hey, like actually coffee does not sort of work with my body.
Yeah, and I think working with a healthcare practitioner and maybe a naturopath would, of course, that's going to be the one that I would recommend, but working with a naturopath to help you figure that out would be a great idea, because it's complex, right? Yes, you can do genetic testing and you can say, okay, what are your liver detoxification levels like? And, there's a part of the liver, cytochrome P450, 1E2, I believe, is the variant that helps detoxify caffeine. So you can take a look at that specifically, but then you want to take a look at the blood sugar balance. So from a genetic perspective, you're looking at GLUT2 receptors, amylase, how you're breaking that down. But there are ways of looking at the body, listening to the symptoms and kind of saying, okay, you know, here's what the symptoms are saying, but you've got to take it in the context of the whole picture, the whole person, and you're going to need someone who is kind of removed to take that higher viewpoint. There's that saying, you know, you can't see the forest for the trees. I even say to all of my students, as well as, you know, all of my friends who are naturopaths, myself, you know, get a good naturopath, because you're not going to be able to see it for yourself.
Oh, okay, okay, yeah, yeah, and then the second question going to you know, that second win. So one thing I noticed about myself was at work and stuff. You know, like, let's say you have sort of energy, and then it comes to the afternoon, right? And then you know you get off work, and then let's say you know you sort of have that second wind, and then you know you might get back home, and then it's like, oh, I'm sort of like down again, and then like right before you go to bed, you have another second wind, and it's like, why is that sort of happening? Is that from like the caffeine, like through that's been in your system, that's just keeps giving you like sort of like little hits as like as it starts working through your system, or is it like other things that are sort of happening in your environment?
It could be other things, and that's what you want to take a look at. You're right to say, hey, if your body's not metabolizing caffeine very well and you're having coffee, you're getting these spikes and crashes in terms of your energy levels. And what most people don't realize is that coffee can actually contribute to blood sugar imbalances. And my patients are always like, what do you mean? I'm having black coffee. There's no sugar in it. How is it affecting my sugar levels? But this goes back to the gentleman that you were kind of talking to earlier. For some people who don't metabolize caffeine very well, what will happen is when they have, or if they have sensitive blood sugar levels, when they have coffee, it actually, coffee, when you look at the studies, it's what we call, it mobilizes fat. So it tells your fat cells to break down, and then puts those fats as fuel source into the bloodstream so we can turn it into sugar. So we have these sugar levels that are climbing. And so once we metabolize coffee, once we metabolize the caffeine and the constituents from it, at that point in time, we can do something about the sugar that's building up in our system from those fats being released. Or if you're exercising at the time, you'll burn it off. So this is why a lot of athletes will use caffeine for that effect, for a fat burning effect, but to get more fuel to their workout. So if you're actually burning it off, that's great. But for most people, we're not. We're
Uh,
sitting at a computer, right? So you get this sugar level coming up, you get the insulin pulling that down, and then you get a fast drop off in your blood glucose levels and your blood sugar levels. So your sugar levels crash. So your sugar levels, rather than staying like, you know, fairly steady throughout the day, are spiking up and crashing down and spiking up and crashing down. And when it comes crashing down, that's when you need your next hit, right? That's when you're craving for the coffee. And usually it's not just the coffee, it's the, you know, Tim Hortons double, double, triple with the Timmies, Timbits. And I love Tim Hortons. So I will say, you know, don't stop going to Tim Hortons. Just go get their green tea, right? Because
yeah,
they make great green tea.
yeah,
Um, yeah.
okay,
So
okay.
that could be part of what's happening for some people. But what could also be happening, number two, is if you're not eating to fuel your blood sugar levels properly, or if you have changes and shifts in terms of your cortisol levels, your stress response, if you've been on the go for too long and you have these spikes in cortisol, but then, you know, you're not really compensating very well. So then you get a crash in cortisol levels, right? That could affect your energy too. If you're finding that it's happening after you eat your afternoon snack or after you eat your lunch, hey, it could be food sensitivities. So there's a number of different things that can contribute to that state of just not feeling well. And that's where you kind of have to get some help in terms of dialing that in for you and saying, what is this for you?
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, that's very interesting. Okay. And now like you know like what you were talking about there with caffeine and stuff, like, you know, either reducing it or increasing it, really depending on oneself, right? And doing that research. You know, talking about habits now, because like, you know, same thing with food and you know, caffeine. You know, is like trying to build good habits, right? And through your you know, your career as a doctor, what have you seen has been like the best habits, like, you know, to build good habits and, you know, let's say, you know, reduce bad habits, right? So to get rid of them. And what sort of strategies do you use to sort of help people stay on track of, you know, keeping their good habits or building their good habits, and then also getting rid of their bad habits?
So, a lot of my patients ask the same thing in a little bit of a different way, where they kind of say, if I want to live as long as possible, feeling as vibrant as possible, looking as great as possible, what's the one secret? What's the one thing I can do? And I tell them it's not one thing. It's those 10,000 little things that you do every single day. So developing those habits are absolutely critical. And developing at first, it's going to take a little bit of effort. It's going to take a little bit of energy, but eventually it is going to become just something that you do on a regular basis. And so what we have to look at is those different pillars to those habits as well. So if you want to live to 120, looking as young as possible, staying as fit and healthy as possible, and still being vibrant, what you're looking at is eating real food, number one, which is really challenging to do nowadays. There's actually a lot of people question, does real food actually even exist anymore? Can you actually get the vitamins and minerals from your food anymore? And we've got some really great arguments for saying, you really can't. It's very challenging, right? Then drink pure water. Well, that's really hard to do nowadays too, but you've got to get those in as your basic pillars. So working with someone who is an expert who can dial in your nutrition is absolutely critical. And then drinking pure water and getting the right water, absolutely critical. You also need a stress management practice. Stress is the biggest killer. And I used to say is one of the biggest killers. And now I'd kind of say, with everything going on with the pandemic, and with how that's affecting the economy, with the inability for any of us to kind of get our sea legs and stabilize, we're all feeling more vulnerable. We're all lacking that sense of control. As good as you are, and as tight as your diet is, if you don't have a stress management practice right now, your health is going to be suffering. And I see a lot of people in my clinic right now for anxiety, for depression, for insomnia, directly as a result of stress. And so stress will actually age you faster as well, and it will contribute to a number of diseases.
So talking into that, actually, that's great, because that leads to my actual next question, was actually talking about stress and stress reduction practices. And what do you recommend on that sort of part, right? Like, what can you do to reduce stress? Because like that's something I've sort of dealt with in my life, is being stressful or having anxiety. And like I understand it's like I feel like, I can sense like, oh, I'm anxious for like this reason, right? And it's like, but like, why am I anxious? It's like, or with like stress, it's like, why am I stressing myself? And I find a lot of people put a lot more pressure on themselves than they actually should, right? Like they usually make things a lot more stressful than they need to be. Everything, the majority of stuff is like, I sort of think is pretty easy. It's just sort of like in your head, you get into your head that it's sort of like, oh, you think it's going to be a lot more work than what it actually is. So what do you recommend to sort of reduce that stress, or to acknowledge that and sort of understand it better?
There is a lot of tools that you have at your disposal. And so I would say approach the stress management in the same way that you would approach the nutritional management. So you do have to recognize that there are foods that will make stress worse, right? There are foods that can cause cortisol to come high, cortisol levels to come low. There are supplements that you can use that can help in terms of managing stress. But you can also do things like exercise. But by exercise, you've got to find out the right exercise for you. So by exercise, it's not too much and it's not too little. If you exercise too much, you can actually increase cortisol, that stress hormone, that fight or flight hormone, and make the anxiety worse. But if you don't exercise enough, you're going to make that anxiety worse too. The other thing is that you need a spiritual practice. And I'm not here to tell you what that is, but if you don't feel a sense of connectedness within the universe, or that sense of community, that's going to affect those stress levels. When we take a look at socialization, absolutely critical. And I would also say then looking at different stress management techniques, whether it be, again, meditation, whether it be going outside for a walk. Getting outside in the sunlight is huge for stress management. Whether it be looking at psychotherapy. For me, hypnosis. A lot of my patients really want to access the hypnosis because it's fantastic for helping with that stress relief component. There's so many different areas that you can take a look at. And for me, I also use an app called BrainTap. It's an app that you can get on your phone. You can listen to it, and there's a number of different types of things that you can listen to that will help not only with respect to calming the body, but you can also do things to improve health and improve the mind. You can actually increase focus, concentration, memory, and learning with it too.
Oh, okay.
So,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Yeah. I was just going to say that's very interesting. Okay.
And with respect to that mental health picture as well, I would also say working with someone that will help you to allow you to connect to your goals while also having a sense of fulfillment. So on February 20th, I'm doing a virtual seminar with a gentleman by the name of Steve Anderson. And Steve Anderson, he taught and coached the gold medal Olympic beach volleyball. So he coached the Australian team to the gold, which was considered to be impossible to do. And they did the impossible, and it was amazing. And so he actually has a specific strategy that he uses that is a mapping strategy that will help you not only kind of figure out, hey, what is success, but what is going to bring you meaning and value. And he's going to be giving away some of those key tips. So for those of your listeners who want access to that, they can go to my website, and there's information on there about connection to Steve Anderson and connection to that virtual seminar, because having that sense of fulfillment is critical. And we talk about, okay, success, and we can always get caught up into, okay, success means I have a bigger house, I have the bigger car, I make this amount of money, I have, all of these physical things. But that gets to a certain point where you've achieved that. And then what? Are you boxing yourself in? Do you have an exit strategy? When you achieve that, does it really give you a sense of value and purpose? Does it really give you a sense of legacy? And for most people, it doesn't. And so there are strategies and tools that you can take a look at. So as you're striving within your business and to create the life that you want, if you're working towards something that gives you meaning, value, purpose, and creates that legacy, you won't find it stressful. You'll have a lot more energy to put towards that. So I would say looking at those different pillars and aspects are critical.
Oh, okay. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. So really connecting, the spirituality, blah, blah, blah. I can't speak for a second. Like that sort of side of things, with your goals, and sort of bringing it together as one is a huge thing of, finding happiness, which is probably, like, I would say, is the most important thing in life is actually, being happy, right? It's not about the money. It's not about this, it's not about that. Like if you're happy and your friends and family and everybody has their health and it's happiness, then I think, that's the best part of life. So now, what did you want to add something?
I was going to just really reiterate that and say, you can, if you're wealthy, but you don't have your health, you're going to spend all of the money that you can getting that health back because you can't enjoy the wealth. Or if you are wealthy and you don't have that sense of connectedness, of community, if you don't have that sense of purpose, you'll hit it and it'll be flat. And I've seen so many patients in my office where, not just from a wealth perspective, but also from the perspective of, I work with a lot of CEOs, and I work with a lot of what I call MEOs, which are moms that are, those high performance moms. And they're like, okay, I've got the house, I've got the car, I've got the family, I've got the income, I've got these properties, and I'm not happy. What's wrong? And they don't get it. They're like, why am I not happy? And they're missing that sense of fulfillment and joy and legacy and purpose. So that's
Okay.
absolutely critical.
So quickly, actually, because I know we're coming to end here. One, to go a little bit deeper into that, and say, like, how can you sort of find that within oneself? And I know it's not like an easy question, right? Of saying like, hey, do this and you'll be fine. It's like a lot of like soul search and a lot of like being with yourself and understanding yourself on a much deeper level. But any advice that you could talk about, like of actually how to figure that out and how to figure out oneself would be great. And then two, giving advice to, let's say, somebody that wants to become a naturopathic doctor in the future, and what advice you'd have for that.
Yeah. So in terms of really delving in and finding out that sense of purpose, there's a number of different things that you can do. If you have a spiritual practice, whether that's a religious practice or a practice that is not religious but is spiritually based, really setting that up as a pillar is critical. So, if you have a religious practice, talking to your rabbi, imam, priest, monk, those are great things. Spending time in prayer, where you're actually just spending time being quiet, maybe being out in nature, walking and connecting with God, absolutely critical. When you have that quiet time, you open up that space for God to talk back. And God talks to all of us, right? And if you don't have, I know some people who they don't believe in God, or they're not comfortable with the term of God, call it the universe, call it the ocean. But finding that time to connect is critical. If you have a spiritual practice, it doesn't have to be a religious practice. Spending that time in meditation, spending that time, in a yoga asana practice, again, spending that quiet time, just getting really centered and focused, is absolutely critical. And then what I would also say along with that is working with someone who you feel comfortable with that can help you walk through that journey and take that journey. So, for myself, that was a big part of my journey in terms of doing the training in hypnosis and becoming certified as a yoga instructor, because I wanted that deeper mind, body, spirit connection. So I do work with a lot of my patients that way. Not all naturopaths do. You might want to look at someone like Steve Anderson, who is a coach, and that's what he does. So he has, again, his specific mapping system, which again, he's going to share at the virtual summit, that will help you really take that deeper dive. And there's a number of very well qualified coaches that are out there who can help you to do that. What I will say with coaches is there are some coaches out there who are incredibly well trained and great at what they do, and there are some that are questionable. So if you are going to work with a life coach, make sure it's someone that you interview, make sure it's someone that you feel comfortable with their qualifications, that what their training is, and that they live it too. And again, I'd be happy to share that information for Steve Anderson so that you could reach out to him as well.
All right, awesome. And then right before we go here, any advice that you'd give to naturopathic doctors or somebody that wants to pursue that type of career path?
First of all, I'd say it's a fantastic career. I absolutely love it. I've been in practice now for 21 years. And I still love it. I'm learning all the time. And the great thing about it too is that all of those times that I went, all those places that I traveled the world to train, I got to write that off as a business expense. So, you can't get better than that. It's so fun. But what I would say is definitely there are two naturopathic colleges in Canada. One is the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine that's in Toronto, and the other one is Boucher, which is in Vancouver. And so I would say definitely go and visit and check them out. You can do virtual tours. They're now the classes are online. I teach at the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine. Of course, I'm partial to them, but we just had some wonderful news. The two colleges have amalgamated. So, ta-da! So, you can go from one to the other, which is great. But I would say definitely go and check that out. And I would say talk to a naturopath. Pick up the phone, give me a call. I'd be happy to chat with you. As well, you can go onto my website and book a fireside chat. We'll connect. And I would say if you have the opportunity to shadow one, it's called preceptoring, to be in their office to see what it's like, definitely take advantage of that as well.
All right, awesome.
And go and visit a naturopath. If you haven't been to a naturopath before, that's probably the best thing to do, is kind of see what the experience is like.
Oh, okay, awesome, awesome. Well, thank you for your time, Val. It's been amazing talking with you and sort of hearing your story and all the great advice you have. Where can people find out more, about you and how to get in contact with you, and then also with for your webinar that's coming out?
So they can go to my website, which is drvalfranc.com. So drvalfranc.com. They can also connect with me in person, and I will definitely give you that contact information. So you can email me at info@drvalfranc.com. And you could also give me a call. All of those are great ways of connecting. The website, if you go on there and you go under workshops or services, you're going to see the workshops, and that will have some of my workshops listed as well.
Ah, okay, awesome, awesome. Well, thanks again, Ben. Thanks again, and it's been amazing talking with you.